Günaydın Aslı Hocam, merhabalar, nasılsınız?
İyiyim, teşekkürler. Siz nasılsınız? Hoş geldiniz.
Hoş bulduk, teşekkür ederim, ben de iyiyim. Sağ olun.
Hello, Ilya. Good morning. Afternoon for you.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon
Good
all.
morning for you. Yeah, good morning for
Thank
you.
you, thank you.
Ilya Hoca is our studio co-supervisor, and there is an assistant called Rian. I think I made co-host. Hello, Rian.
Hello, Hocam. Good
You,
morning.
Yusuf Hoca, maybe Yusuf Hoja, Rian, I don't know, have you met? Because
No, we haven't met, no.
Yeah.
But I'm pleased to meet you all.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Ilya Hoja, do you think that we can start or we
Yeah.
need someone else?
Yeah, I think we are entering the 13 sharp. So I think we can start right now. Maybe you can lead the meeting as well.
Semakin merdu, gejolak berirama di kalbu, haru dan rindu di dalam dan bertalu di hatiku. Inilah saatnya untuk bertemu. Semakin bergema, nyaring terdengar kabarmu di sana. Tergugah rasa di jiwa untuk bersua dan bersama kembali seperti dulu kala. We have to go move on. Nothing can beat me down. Percaya kita semua pasti bisa lewati semua rintangan yang ada untuk selamanya. Ayo lebih baik untuk Indonesia, kita bawa arsitektur berjaya. Universitas Islam Indonesia, untukmu, padamu, di sini kami setia. Duri kampus, ayo ngumpul kepo, tak ada ragu. Kita lewati ruang dan waktu, bersatu lewati jalan yang berliku. Terus maju, di sana mimpi yang kita tuju. Walau berbeda, di sini adalah rumah kita. Selamanya harus selalu kita jaga seutuhnya, menyatu di dalam jiwa raga. We have to go move on. Nothing can beat me down. Percaya kita semua pasti bisa lewati semua rintangan yang ada untuk selamanya. Ayo lebih baik untuk Indonesia, kita bawa arsitektur berjaya. Universitas Islam Indonesia, untukmu, padamu, aku setia. Jadi yang terbaik untuk kita semua. Ayo bawa arsitektur mendunia. Universitas Islam Indonesia, untukmu, padamu, di sini kami setia. Semakin merdu, gejolak berirama di kalbu, haru dan rindu di dalam dan bertalu di hatiku. Inilah saatnya untuk bertemu. Semakin bergema, nyaring terdengar kabarmu di sana. tergugah rasa di jiwa untuk bersua dan bersama kembali seperti dulu kala. We have to go move on.
Facilities in walkable distances. The boundaries of a traditional mahalle were well known by its inhabitants because every mahalle emerged first as a village, separated from others by unbuilt areas. Its center was usually a mosque, accompanied by a bath and a primary school. As time went by, the distances between the mahalles either got smaller or disappeared. Yet because each mahalle as a real place passed its collective memory from one generation to another, the boundaries were always known. The change came with the migration wave that first hit Istanbul, then a few other major cities, and finally each and every provincial center in the country. Due to rapidly increasing population in the cities, the value of urban lots skyrocketed, which seduced locals to submit their properties to developers. As a result, new and much denser mahalles emerged with a lot of newcomers who did not yet have a collective memory of the place, and the signs of the one that existed before has been erased by modern urban plans. The pre-modern residential neighborhoods, since the time of Mesopotamian civilizations, exhibited a character of spontaneous development, which is called in modern times organic or picturesque, without much thought spared for it. Certainly the labyrinthine aspect of such settlements is the key factor for the so-called organic aspect of cities of Islamic cultures, and it is one of the leading factors for the formation of the boundaries that helps self-identification with a place. Contrary to the modern urban planning, where mostly linear perspectival views control one's vision, the multiple divisions of vision by means of the additive accumulation of spaces create visual and psychological boundaries, one after another, and also interiors within interiors. This hierarchy of spaces, which is unique to each and every neighborhood, not only helped to demarcate the boundaries between the neighborhoods, they also created a depth within each that helped the psychological well-being of its inhabitants. It is interesting that modern architects cannot easily come to terms with the creation of the unplanned effect that pertain to such so-called organic settlements. Because architecture in the whole world today is the continuation of what started in the West during the Renaissance, it is meaningful that these effects were first formulated mainly by the non-Western architects in the 20th century, namely Hasan Fathi from Egypt and Turgut Cansever from Turkey. As well known, Fathi rejected the city and wanted to revitalize the village as the core of the traditional culture. Cansever, however, saw that core in the Ottoman town. An Ottoman town was always a small entity, and the big city was also an agglomeration of small entities. His efforts to revitalize this concept in the close vicinities of metropolises or rapidly growing cities made it impossible to realize because of the aforementioned conditions. Although his theory is occasionally referred to as a medievalistic nostalgia by some cunning architects, it was in fact based on the phenomenological issues also mentioned above. Cansever sneered at Paris because it represented the opposite of his convictions about the ideal relationship of man with his environment. Paris was once an organically developed picturesque city until Baron Osman applied to it his famous boulevards and large openings like squares and parks. Despite the fact that these new arteries disrupted the spatial hierarchies, Paris continued the traditional courtyards, some of which were large enough to create a sense of place, protected from the totality of the metropolis, which flowed into every corner through the boulevards. Because modern art and architecture were both very much fond of the individual object, modern design naturally favored the freestanding form. Although fresh air and daylight were usually put forth as the main causes of the breaking up with the boundaries, it was also a problem of form and spatiality, which gave the new architecture its modernity. The effect of the freestanding building on the city is dramatic, given that a city is first of all an agglomeration of buildings. While historic cities like Istanbul or Paris formed the urban space with continuous walls and thus controlled the emptiness being both unnatural and inhuman space. The agglomeration of freestanding buildings inevitably create empty spaces between them, which flow into each other in an uncontrollable way. One can sense that Le Corbusier was aware of this problem and tried to solve it by very long twisty blocks in his urban proposals, like in the Ville Radieuse of 1930. Despite this effort, the emptiness still exists due to the oversize, which does not allow the sense of belonging to a place to occur. In The Collage City, Colin Rowe and Fred Cotter criticized the modernist passion for the emptiness, resulting from the spatial flow, and pointed out the previous modern cities, like the 19th century Paris, to explain the importance of boundaries and interiors for any modern city. For Rowe and Cotter, boundaries in a city is like the prerequisite for controlling time. Boundaries in a city is the prerequisite for controlling time, given that the experience of space is a temporal, a time-bound phenomenon. Like boxes which preserve precious contents, demarcated spaces preserve their peculiar temporality and protect them against the sweeping winds of the passing time, as now. A city of freestanding, detached buildings are unable to preserve time for the past of now in the future. Rowe has made studio exercises by superimposing the new onto the old, which created the effect of a collage. Here in this slide, Pierre Chéreau's glass house in Paris can be a good example of a city's change in time through consecutive additions, which adds every time to its complexities and intimate spaces. This is a courtyard view, and on the right is the interior view of the glass house. It's a very modernist building, finished in the beginning of 1930, in a very traditional courtyard of Paris, which is impossible to see it or to find from outside while walking along a boulevard around the perimeter block. The one on the left is a photo montage made by an artist who superimposed Le Corbusier's Ville Radieuse on the present condition of Paris. On the right is a picture from Bursa, which is not an artistic creation, which is a fact, a reality. The one on the left is a fantastic artistic creation. The one on the right doesn't want to be fantastic at all. It just happened. So this is very ironic. So if there is an exact opposite of hierarchical horizontal boundaries, it can best be exemplified by New York, or in Le Corbusier's utopic cities, where the verticality is the primary element of separation. Vertically planned cities are unable to create humane public space because of the immense vertical and horizontal emptiness that flow between the streets and tall walls. But any post-Second World War city built according to modern urban planning principles is no different from New York in its basic properties. including the Turkish cities. No earthquakes or social problems could stop the growth of cities in Turkey. The migration necessitated rapid and simple city plans for the growing demand of housing and business. These plans, which usually lagged behind the urban sprawl, were almost always controversial. But they have one simple solution for all: creating big lots between the streets and then dividing these lots into smaller lots for residential units and other functions, but mostly for apartment blocks, which are in turn developed by private hands in accordance with certain regulatory codes. This system worked when the size of cities were ample enough for reaching from one place to another, usually for one's commuting between home and the workplace. However, as the cities reached a monstrous size, with a big lack in public buildings and recreational facilities now dispersed in a very large area, cities turned into antagonistic habitats, menacing its inhabitants and obstructing them to gain an existential foothold, which, according to Christian Norberg Schultz, is belonging to a place. In this situation, urban space is almost always a dangerous odyssey taken on daily between one's home address and anywhere else necessary. In such a situation, the gated community emerged as a solution. Private car ownership and living in gated communities at the outskirts of big towns were two natural outcomes of chaotic urban sprawl. Gated communities became the middle class's dream, for they pretend to offer what the city can't: green areas, playgrounds, car parks, sports facilities, and security. But due to their still far-away locations, gated communities not only added to the traffic problem, they also refuse interaction with the city except in daily excursions for work, school, or shopping. Other than the recreational facilities, the gated communities stand out for one other advantage, which is the introverted space that can create a character of place, albeit slightly. But because the gated communities in Turkey are so much profit-oriented that the endless repetition of many high-rise blocks make them unable to break up from the any-place characteristics of mass housing. The Turkish gated community concept developed for the Turkish higher middle classes is in fact a socialist mass housing system now turned into a wild capitalist entrepreneurship with the help of extra facilities and security elements. Like the satellite cities of the modernist planning of the recent past, the special experience of a gated community inhabitants is usually reduced to a few interiors like the apartment, office, shopping mall, and the classroom, as well as the painful motorways that connect the long distances between these interiors. With its introverted public space, which it protects jealously from strangers, the gated community is a minimized mock-up of an ideal neighborhood. Although it provides comfort to its inhabitants to a certain degree, its detachment from the cultural and commercial vitals of the city causes their mutual degeneration. The gated community promotes the global consumer culture more than any other housing style, and therefore it becomes the arch enemy of locality, places which can preserve their space-time specificity. The ideal solution for the incessantly growing but at the same time degenerating Turkish cities is to adapt the advantages of the gated communities to the urban renovation projects which take place within the bulk of apartment street fabric of any location in any given city. Most importantly, the introverted character obligatory for a gated community can be used in an open manner in order to recreate modern neighborhoods. We must accept that the famous public space has been dead for so long since the modern capitalist mechanisms divided the urban life between home and workplace. The remnants of the so-called public space like the meydans, piazzas, streets, souks, etc. now exist only in old cities and mostly as historic landmarks for tourist attractions. These places today are only the shell of a locality that was once complete with its inhabitants. Still, tourists love these spaces because they are the only places for the global middle classes to feel the sense of a place which is bound to them in their daily lives. Therefore, to be able to stay all day long and every day in a specific locality in a city can be the God's grace for the urban dwellers of the digital and post-pandemic age. If the workplace problem is solved, most of the educational, shopping, and recreational facilities can be easily located in modern neighborhoods in walkable or bicycling distances. Temporary office spaces in the vicinity to be rented for a few hours during the day can also favor online businesses. All in all, the constant presence of individuals of every age in car-free spaces in and around such neighborhoods will make human interaction possible and pleasant once again, thus enliven the public spaces anew. Although the location of the workplace is unpredictable for any given person, the growing demand for online communication, education, shopping, and business more and more reduce the need for spaces reserved for any kind of work in cities. The criticism directed to the digital technology, mainly as the archenemy of public space, can be invalidated if a modern, humane neighborhood is created. There is only one obstacle before modern neighborhoods: lack of planning from a holistic and phenomenological perspective. This requires a high level of communication between the individuals as well as bureaucratic establishments as stakeholders in the building or rebuilding of urban space. The examples below are chosen to show some of them. These examples show that both tendencies mentioned above, namely the one which prioritizes movement in space and time, picturesque, organic, and the other which tends to cover an urban interior as one piece, modernistic, provide the potential to complete one another in the city whole. This is because the diversity they create is indispensable for the peculiarity of places from which the sense of belonging will emerge. Rue des Suisses apartments in Paris is a good example for the collage that Rowe and Cotter talks about. The pictures show that the location of the residential design is kind of secluded from the rest of the city in hierarchical levels. Here new was added to the old, and the richer place has been created. Also a car-free zone is created. This is student work. Same can be told for the Master Studio project, which aimed to make an old urban fabric better by means of redesigning a stretch of land between two boulevards. The result is a public space which protects people from both the elements and the machines. Although it is open to the public, its introverted character will enable the locals to adopt this public space as their own. One of the council houses in London, a council house means designed by City Council, so it's a social housing project made by the municipality. The Adams Walk social housing project hides its private courtyards and terrace gardens behind the walls that make its urban face with shops. The two different public characters of the residential complex, outside for the city, inside for the local residents, create the much needed hierarchy for placemaking. Another social housing project in London, Donnybrook Quarter Housing, retains the same hierarchy, but enables the city space to enter inside carefully. These residential units intend to create a vicinity for the immigrants and to give them the feeling of a community which is much needed in a new country. This social housing project in the outskirts of Madrid succeeded to create multi-level pedestrian streets, common and private courtyards. In this residential complex in Paris, Christian de Port-Saint-Parc managed to combine the 19th century perimeter block with the modernist independent block. It is extremely difficult to create a sense of space with high-rise blocks. However, most of the times, crowded cities leave no other alternative to architects. It is important to note here that the special treatment of verticality here, which aims to differentiate the facade at different levels and making the blocks appear shorter, definitely obtains a character for the site. Giving each block and even each level a unique character also helps to cope with the modern stereotypical apartment block effect. Ricardo Bofi's apartment blocks reflect the fantasy implied by their names, like the Red Wall, La Muralla Roja. Postmodern architecture tried to reestablish the effects of the fantastic literature that appeared in the early 18th century. The character of a place can invoke the effects of gloominess and oppressiveness, as long as these effects only simulate the experience, as in Sublime, which is also an 18th century conception concerning art and architecture. But the current trend is Scandinavian coolness that puts forth the feeling of easy living, absolute comfort without dramatism. Like in the Adams Walk in London, the MRDV reinterpreted the perimeter block concept in Switzerland, where they designed 16 different housing types, which vary in size from 30 to 130 square meters. Here, as in the Autumn Walk, Donnybrook Quarter, in Winnipeg, or even in the Rue des Hautes Formes, the diversity is used to reduce the effect of alienation to the environment due to the ever-present now in the new constructions. Because the examples above are only partial interventions in a city, one thing is naturally missing in most of such projects: the public facilities of ample size, which will support staying inside or around the neighborhood. This must also be one of the primary challenges of such projects for the post-digital and neo-pandemic age. An urban renewal project in Paris gives us the clues for the effectiveness of dispersed public facilities inside the new kind of perimeter blocks. Below the red square is the Bibliothèque Nationale, designed by Dominique Perrault. You see the four corner towers. So this perimeter block design is a kind of passage to that public building from the metro line. You see here, metro line, the metro stop, and you can pass through this zone along this road and go directly to the Bibliothèque Nationale, which I used to do many days a week for 1 year. Here is the passage. So the urban space stays outside, and you enter a kind of protected and silent area, and you just walk in a pleasant way. Here, the hierarchy of public spaces is also created by locating courtyards within courtyards. So this is a big lot, but inside this big lot, there is a common open area, which is a kind of courtyard or a garden. But every apartment block, a project, usually have their own courtyard, which is partly opened to this main central area. So there's a hierarchy of interiors within interiors in this project also. So in the middle of this public space, there is this chapel you see on the left, the red building. In the main courtyard, accessible by all, is found a chapel surrounded by the silence of the private gardens of the apartment blocks. There's also a kindergarten located in one of these buildings. On the right is the entrance to the private garden of one of those apartment blocks, which is seen from the center also. Here is here are two views from the inside. It doesn't tell you that this is a place in a metropolis. It's not exactly center, but still you can say so, because Paris is a metropolitan area. In the center of a very big town, you can find a place like this, which is also the result of a 19th century perimeter block. You also have the same experience when you have the chance to enter them, but you usually can't because they are private. Now, this concept, a new urban design concept, makes it public. That's like Christian de Pont-Saint-Parc imagined. This is the rearrangement of an reinterpretation of a previous idea for modern urban dwellers, and it's a good solution. This urban renewal competition project for Izmir shows that pedestrianization and public facilities can be best achieved if large urban areas are planned from the perspective explained above. The red buildings, the blocks are the public facilities. This urban renewal, the same, okay. Such planning will inevitably provide the chance to connect the protected interiors to one another, and thus create a chain of neighborhoods, places that can reduce the need for commuting on daily basis. Outsides are more, reflect more the character of modern urban life with business, trade, motorways, cars, etc. But insides, which allow pedestrians to walk from one neighborhood to another, from one place to another, are more protected thanks to this perimeter block concept, which is open. Despite its high quality, this design also follows more or less the habit of the planners to centralize the public facilities, an application which reduces the one's chance to visit other places. What I'm trying to say was the public spaces are not dispersed enough. They kind of gather around. To my idea, the better solution is to disperse them as much as possible, so that the people will prefer to walk the distances to arrive them and experience the city, the chain of neighborhoods, so to speak, as a whole, and this will increase his or her awareness of belonging to a place. This is my project. The project I worked with some other young architects, which are graduates of the school. This project was made for an urban renewal proposal for a municipality in Istanbul. where I tried to disperse the public facilities that you see in blue. But some of the blues on the left and on the right, on extreme right and extreme left, also existed. Already existed. So I just tried to make a spine of them by connecting them in a walkable distance and with a pedestrianized zone. They included a mosque, youth center, women's centers, science center, and sports facilities. But this was only partially achieved because there wasn't enough space in this very dense site. There are already a lot of high-rise buildings here, so you have to remake them and also add those public facilities around and inside them. Pedestrianization and dispersed public facilities would positively affect socialization of the daily commuters and desperate housewives. The diversity in form, size, and of different levels was used to cope with the shallowness of the main problem of any new construction. This is a student project. This is last semester 301 architectural design studio. The main purpose of the last semester's 301 architectural design studio was to recreate new neighborhoods with the concept of dispersed public facilities. So I tried to do the same thing in a more, agreeable way with the student project. Of course, we had many groups, but I am only presenting you the design of my group. To do that, students initially prepared the common layout, which is on the right, that decided the place of the residential blocks, which are in red or crimson, the planning of the reduced traffic and public facilities such as parks, kindergartens, health or cultural facilities, so on and so forth. So these students they had to choose one public facility for their lots. There were 13 lots for each student. This is a lot, this is a lot, this is a lot. So the blues are public spaces which were to be designed by those students in their own lots. So maybe two neighborhoods became a whole through walkable distances around those public facilities and residential units. So they also had introverted, protected interiors, but also accessible to everyone in a certain way, which varied from one project to another. The result, I believe, was a success in terms of creating an urban area as a prototype of a chain of neighborhoods that cities need to become in order to survive. Here you see each student's project located as a layout in their own lots. And you see that the public space also includes a very large here and here pedestrianized area, also green area, which people really need in this metropolitan city. So they need to go somewhere, commute. They have to use motor vehicles to go to a park, and this is absurd. So they have to be inside or around their neighborhoods, and this project aimed to do that as well. These are the outcomes of this project. With a very accentuated diversity, each of the 13 residential lots had more or less protected but open interiors, which invited people for shortcut walks and or to visit the public facility it involved. For example, this was a public facility, but I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was. But here in the sunken garden, there is a kindergarten here. But also people can pass through those interiors also, and on the upper levels there are so-called suspended gardens for the terraces for the residents of those units, protected from foreigners, although they are maybe close by dwellers, in a hierarchical manner. They also have their intimacy, so to speak. Evet, here is the Rafadan Tayfa, the last two slides. The very popular Turkish animated cartoon serial, Rafadan Tayfa, the bunch of soft-boiled eggs, dwells on the concept of old neighborhood, which slightly but not essentially changed with the introduction of modest apartment blocks. Here's the interior space of the Mahalle of Rafadan Tayfa. They also, the children are always here. My hope is that one day we may also value the effects produced in such representations of space, not real, epic, fantastic, or nostalgic, above other things that are all too real, those which tend to reduce us as subjects to mere objects. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusuf Hoca, for this very nice presentation. I think it's very informative for us and for our students. If you don't mind, maybe we can continue with the other professor, and after that we can take question and answers. If you have time, Yusuf Hoca.
Well, I have a studio also, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, then we will take question and answers now, and then we will let you go.
Okay.
Okay, who would like to start first? If someone would like to ask a question to Yusuf Hoca.
So what's the level of the studio?
302.
302, okay.
Yeah.
My former students would be here.
Probably, yes. And we wait questions from them.
They also know.
If you have a question, just jump and ask. And by the way, we are very crowded.
Yes, I see 182.
Yeah, it's a surprise. I mean, not a surprise for you, maybe, but for me, I mean, for a studio class, you know, it's a big number. We never do such a thing in our studio, but maybe this is the better way.
Will you have a common jury?
We will have a jury with Ilya Hoca. It's the plan right now. That's it for now.
Okay.
Maybe I have a question. Yusuf Hoca.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting to see the Mahalle concept in the past, and then somehow trying to be continue in urban setting, and how to invent the spaces. And do you think it can be also applied in terms of the, say, a unified structure, or maybe in one architectural structure? So instead of in urban design scale, but in one building, is there any example of in the cases in Turkey?
Yes, in fact, the gated communities are usually so, but they also started to apply the gated community concept in this rather central urban lots, if they can, because they are usually very expensive, those lots. So the developers usually prefer the periphery of the cities. But they do. For example, I remember one in Piyale Pasha, which I can't remember the name. I saw smaller ones, which are not significant from the architectural perspectives, but they always realized for one purpose, is to create an interior which is jealously protected from foreigners. There's too much security problems in Turkish cities today.
Okay.
So they kind of want to close an interior space for the others. So they essentially lack the most important elements from my point of view, which is the socialization of people in a neighborhood. It has or around between the neighborhoods. So they need the open spaces to pass through, to be in, and they also have to be supported by what I call public facilities. Because if you don't have anything in your protected gated community, you just have to go there. And if you can't go there, you start watching TV or doing something on the web. But if there are public facilities, the public space, elements of public space, you go and join them, which is if they are in walkable distances. So they have to be seen from an urban perspective. Otherwise, it won't work. I don't believe that it will work. The situation will almost be the same as now, which will look better from outside, architectural wise.
From our perspective in Indonesia, gated communities is some kind of pejorative because it's like imported from American way.
Yes.
But how about in Turkey? Is that any
it's highly valued here.
competing meaning between translation for the mahla from the mahla or import from somewhere else?
Well, it's very surprising for me to hear that it's pejorative. It has a pejorative meaning in Indonesia. But here it's it's a sign of prestige in Turkey.
Okay.
Everybody wants to be there, but it's effective. If you have a child and you cannot leave the child outside to play by himself, that's a problem. If in a gated community, there's a relatively big protected garden where your child or children can play with others and socialize, and where you can find a car park for your car, which is good. I'm not against it. What I'm against is the fact that it's gated, the fact that it just separates. It doesn't try to gather people, the society.
Yes, I think exactly the same in Indonesia because of the segregation.
Segregation.
And we have already have some kind of bad history in 1998. We have a riot, and one of the object of this riot is these gated communities because it's overlaid with racial segregation also. So that's why I call it's rather pejorative because of this side effect of this gated, and there is a layer of race and also economic segregation. So I think it's very very interesting if we dig more of how this competing meaning.
Exactly.
One as a source of security, etc., and also identity based on the local culture, like mahalla. At the same time, vis-a-vis some kind of imported meaning of gated community, like Orange County in the state that segregation play into role. I think this is very interesting.
I agree.
Thank you.
The gated community fills the gap of mahalles. In fact. They're just the outcome of the non-existence of disappearance of mahalles.
Okay.
And, they have to come back I believe if the city will survive, they must come back in a reasonable way. That's what I believe.
Yeah. Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you, Yusuf Hoca, for the answer. Is anybody else? Yes, Meira.
Actually, last semester I was in the other project, and we worked this project. Yusuf Hoca know me or not? I am not sure.
I do know you, Hümeyra.
And actually, I do not have a question, but I want to say something about neighborhood, because when I was a child, we were live in a dangerous place in Istanbul, Esenler actually. But we could play out. We could play football or something.
Yes.
And now the main problem is the other main problem is car problem. Everywhere is car, and we cannot find a place to play. I think the other looking place, I don't know.
Yes, a car is the I believe is the one of the arch enemies of any urban space. That's why I believe planning is important, but not planning from the point of view of modern urban planners, but from the point of view of architects and the issues of issues I discussed here, like phenomenological perspective, etc. What you said was important, because in the mahalles in the past, there were invisible boundaries. I didn't experience that, but they always say that when a foreigner enters a mahalle, everybody knows he's or she's a foreigner. So you cannot be invisible in a foreign mahalle. It's like entering an intimate zone, but not a family zone, of course. There are hierarchies of intimacy inside the mahalle. So the mahalles had kind of auto-control. Maybe not exactly the same, but in the United States, there's a suburbia, the notion of suburbia. People live in suburbs with inside family houses with gardens, etc. That's the American dream. And in most of the places where the quality is good enough in that suburb, a foreigner is also detected. People, if they, get suspicious about a foreigner walking around, they call the police, and the police comes immediately. So this is maybe the negative side of it. There's the police force, it's maybe restricting the rights of others in experiencing a space by himself. But anyway, the Turkish cities lack any of them, nor the tradition, neither the American way exists in Turkey. It's anything goes. The emptiness of the streets, the urban space, I believe flows inside those streets without any control, because there are no hierarchical intimacy levels which people adopt and control as their own vicinity. That's a problem of design and building. Yes, things don't happen by themselves. Things happen because of something. And what we did to our cities ended up with the current situation. So it's also us who can only change that. But this requires high level of communication. We lack that. I didn't mention that in my presentation, but we kind of need a Western kind of communication skills to be able to achieve something collectively. Everybody on his own kind of situation goes on in our cities, so that's a big problem.
Yes. Thank you. But I can totally say I begin to learn the word, which dangerous problem we have, and I learned thanks to neighborhood, advantages of neighborhood or disadvantages of neighborhood. Yeah, I learned some different experiences, I think.
Very well then.
So look at the positive side, Hümeyra. Good. Any other questions to Yusuf Hoca?
Can I ask questions, if I may?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
How, from your opinion, how does the government see this? This issue.
Yeah.
Is there any effort in terms of, I don't know, regulations maybe, or because what you've been presenting is like a reaction from the maybe architects or designer. So from the perspective of authority,
yes,
is there, from your experience, is there any response to that or not?
That's a good question, which is not easy to answer. But I had my own experience, so I also showed some pictures from that experience. Municipalities are very effective in shaping the urban spaces, and the government is aware of the problems of Turkish cities now. A lot of problems. Because the villages are almost empty in Turkey now. The people very fast immigrated into the cities, and the cities grew very fast. So things are coming late. They lag behind the urban growth. So they have to do something. For example, they have to find places for parks. They have to find places for public facilities. But most importantly, there's a big danger of earthquake in Turkey, and especially Istanbul is expected to have a very big earthquake, and they have to, demolish half of the city and rebuild it. So all these things, and the economy, people are very accustomed to make money from urban, the rent, the speculation. So it's very difficult to change the mechanism of making money from urban lots. So all come together and make what I proposed in my project impossible. So at the end of all those meetings, they said that even I created more residential units than existed before. They said that we simply leave it to the developers. It's better to leave it to developers, and they can solve the problem themselves. We don't have to deal with all those problems of the people who want their property in a better way, etc. So at the end, what they get, the solution they see, the simple solution, they always find the very simple solution, the government, which is a high-rise block, secure in terms of earthquakes and everything, but doesn't solve any problems which I presented here. They don't create a sense of space. They create the emptiness of urban spaces which we have now. They even aggrandize that emptiness. So they don't have the architectural concepts that I discussed here, and they don't have time or money or motivation to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for the nice discussion. Any other questions? Okay. Anyone? Please ask.
Hello, Professor. I'm sorry. I live in Bursa, and you showed us an example from here. And
yes.
I see that building estate, which we call Toki. I see it many times, and I really hate it whenever I see that. And I can't understand who let it to be happen. Why there's no one to say that it's an nonsense to build something like that. Thank you.
That was an interpretation, not a comment, not a question.
No, I'm asking because you have an idea about it, and also many people do, but it still happens.
Yes,
I think
it still happens.
I think she's asking why it's happening and why it's happened.
Why do we keep making?
But I used to live in Bursa while it was happening. The plans were prepared. I didn't see the construction started, but I remember what existed in the site. There were houses and maybe small apartments. That's all. Maybe 10 times more square meter was created, maybe 20 times more. So this is nothing to do with the economic conditions, to finance the urban renewal. It's all about money, to make more money. And they did, actually.
Yeah, it's happened.
There's nothing morally to go against it in this country, because Professor Ilya mentioned in Indonesia, there's a problem of segregation because of gated community. That's the problem. The gated community provides you a quality living, and the message is for the general mass. The message is, if you have money, you can have a better life than the others. So everybody values making money. And if somebody else makes money, they don't just criticize them to disturb the relationship. So this is the problem of lack of communications. People, can't value things other than others yet, as they can't see the future. And that's why they need us as architects, planners, or thinkers, sociologists, philosophers, artists. They need us, but the building system just needs someone to draw the most profitable projects. So, that's a level of communication or culture or civilization, whatever you call it. And its time and space probably didn't arrive in most of the third world yet, or whatever it is, non-Western countries. So that's why we are trying to teach it, at least to make people aware. The West passed those moments before than we did. And we are arriving at this moment after all those things happens, after the, all those technological achievements, digital world, globalization, etc. And it's more difficult to do that now. But, we have to do it if we want to live in cities, or we will leave the cities. There's no other alternative, because this system is just, can be likened to an insect eating up his own habitat in order to survive. At the end, he will kill both his habitat and himself.
Yeah.
I got my answer.
Thank you, Yusuf, for the answer. I think I also totally agree with the answer. Maybe I would ask something, and also I would like to add something. Actually, I was going to ask this Bursa image before. I was thinking to ask, but Sare already has asked. Yeah, it's happened, but what we can do now? Is there anything that we can do, or we can regenerate these areas, or we can adapt to better living conditions? Like, as you mentioned, many interesting ideas, like putting public facilities and some public parks or public areas to the residential, let's say residential units, or even in gated communities. So it doesn't matter, but there are many strategies actually that we are always talking about ourselves, between ourselves. As an architect, and also with other design disciplines like urban planners. By the way, I really agree that urban planners, I think they have a critical role in this issue. For example, I was reading an article about this urban separation, spatial segregation, and they have, as İlya Hoca was talking about it before, yeah. I saw that, I mean, one author gives a suggestion that different types of communities, like I would say that rich communities, middle class, or poor communities, should be separated from each other in a very elegant way. He says that if these two different types of communities become next to each other, very next to each other, some other problems will happen, occur. Like the walls will emerge, or like level difference will emerge. I mean, literally, I mean, as walls, or they can use stairs for it, or some other physical features, or it can be trees, so on. So this is the problem. This is the actual problem, he says. And I actually kind of agree with that, because same thing happened in Levant. I was working in Levant, I mean, for an article, maybe you saw. There's something happening in the area that has many skyscrapers. Levant, and at the backside of Levant, there is a neighborhood called Gültepe, Çeliktepe, Gültepe, and in the other side of this skyscrapers area, there is a Levant houses, like small houses. It has been built as a middle class houses, but now they are just for rich people. I mean, their rent is kind of very high, but something happening there, and these skyscrapers become very dominant in this area, and these Levant houses started to change. They are not houses anymore. They are some kind of offices, industry, dentist, a kindergarten, so on, and they're like the streets of these neighborhoods are being used as a car parking area, so on. It's changing because they are just next to each other. These three districts are I mean, they are very different in context, but they are located just next to each other. So the problems occurring, happening more. This is another thing I would like to say. And one more thing, maybe it is better to share our opinions, ideas here, because we have a lot of people and it is nice time to say this kind of things. For example, we were talking about car parking problem. Yeah, it is everywhere right now. But if we think about the future, what will happen? For example, I saw that the drones will bring you your package in the future. I mean, not cargo, packet transferring firms will not use people for this job. They will use drones, and maybe this will make less traffic jam. I don't know. We have to think about it. I mean, what will be in the future? This could be a transportation problem or any other else. So I think we should think, and the planners will have a very important role for designing these future cities. This is what I wanted to say. And yeah, I will go back to my first question about the Bursa image. So do you have any idea how we can, let's say, fix this thing? I mean, because it has been built, yes, we cannot destroy it, but maybe we can do something for it. I don't know. We should think about it, and I would like to know your opinion.
That's a $1 million question, I believe. Well, while trying to find that image, I happened to see a declaration by a candidate of mayor of Bursa. The person said that I will tear down those blocks if I get elected. And I just smiled when I saw that expression. It's impossible. There's a lot of property built up there, and they will stay at least 50 years. Nothing can be changed. In Istanbul also the same. There are some buildings seen behind the famous silhouette of the mosques in Zeytinburnu, and even the top level of the government criticize that, but they cannot change anything. They are legally built, and people paid a lot of money for them, so they can't do anything. It's a very complicated problem. I mean, it's all about values, but don't forget one thing. When Paris was built in the hands of Baron Osman in the 1850s, starting with the 1850s and so, there was no democracy in France. It was still a monarchy. There were, some elections, but it was not very democratic country. So they could make those big boulevards in a very big city where a lot of people lived. So if they didn't want to leave their quarter, their neighborhood, they were just forced to go out. But today we have democracy, but the problem is we arrived in democracy at the same time we became an industrial society, urbanized society, and the outcome is the natural. This is the natural outcome. Our situation is the natural outcome of this situation. So you've initially asked a question: what can we do to make better neighborhoods? The answer is to convince the people. Because every time I communicated with the municipality officials, they kind of understood what I said. They seemed to believe what I want to show them, want to convince them with. But after a while, after some contemplation, they realized that this is not possible. They always think that force exerted on them by the society they have to which they are responsible, and they are elected by the people they represent. So those people are the main problem in our system. They have to be convinced, or they have to be, convinced in a certain way that this is better for their immediate or future.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that though.
Yeah,
with populism, it's impossible.
Yeah, we will try our best to teach our students. This is the first thing that we can do, and maybe we want from students to teach their environment. I mean, their families and so on. I think this is a small step, but I think we have to start somewhere somewhere. So maybe it is very small, but I think it will make a big impact. So this is not just for Turkish people. I think it is for maybe, I don't know exactly what's happening in Indonesia. That I will maybe we will see in Professor Baritoadi's presentation. But I think education is a good start for every country. I think this is not just, it is not happening not in our countries. I see many this kind of blocks in China, and they are very crowded, and it is maybe it's maybe bigger problem they have. So everybody should start with their own effort, and then we will see. Maybe in 10 years we will, or let's say 20 years.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. İnşallah hocam. Okay, any other questions? To Yusuf
hocam, may I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Merhaba hocam, this is Rian speaking. A few days ago, Humaira asked very interesting questions related to the tourism in Bali. Why Bali is actually very popular tourist attraction in Indonesia, and of course, it is cannot be separated from the history. So, the studio topic is about the testament of the future. And as we all know, the past, present, and future is always related one to another. And my question is, how is actually the Turkish architect or urban designer or planner see the historical side or the touristic or the cultural side in Istanbul, because Istanbul is very popular for tourist attraction with
Yes.
great historical and cultural sites. How does the architects or designers is actually seeing this in order to shaping the future? How
Yes.
are they actually thinking about this historical thing, and or maybe how on which level of priority is the municipality put the historical side or cultural side on the regulation or rules or etc.
So,
Thank you,
very, very
Hojam.
good question. Thank you. I'm afraid that they don't see it the way I see it. They are very, they buy very popular expressions so easily. Government and local governments they lead the so-called national historic monuments idea for tourists as tourist attractions. What they want is to make profit from tourism, and they see those objects of the past as kind of mummified objects to be presented to some foreign eyes and to make profit from it. And that's called something cultural. And that's very paradoxical. If you freeze culture or mummify it, how can you call it a culture anymore? So tourism is a very problematic when it comes to locality. I'm very big fan of locality. So I'm very worried about tourism to be the motor force of preserving anything. You have to preserve something for the local people. The people adopt it, like it, love it, and preserve it. That's how it has to happen. But if some kind of bureaucratic agency do that, and which is very popular in Turkey because they think it's a good thing because they didn't do it in the past. Say now they are doing it. They are up to do that, but they don't even realize what they're doing as usual. So I'm very negative about it. I don't know how to cope with tourism in general in the world. It's a big problem, but this is one of the reasons, one of the good reasons to create and preserve your locality in some sort of hierarchical interiors, in some sort of hierarchical arrangement of interiors and intimacy. Your place has to be more difficult to be found. In short, foreigners shouldn't walk over them, as they like. They may try to find it. For example, I show you Maison de Verre. I tried to find it 2 times. It was on the map, but I couldn't find it. I didn't know it was hidden inside. So I found a way to enter that courtyard, which could be open, by the way. I'm not against it. But you have to make an effort to find it. Not it's for everybody's walking through it, that courtyard. That's what I believe. And tourism, it's a big problem in the whole world. What I believe is maybe if people like where they live more than they like it now, they will tend to stay in their neighborhood every season. as in the past. They won't need to go, oh, I'm so tired of the city, I'm going for a seaside hotel for a week. You can do that, but you may not want it that bad if you're really happy in your own neighborhood, day and night, winter or summer, you know, as in the real mahalle in the past. That's all I can say.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. This is an interesting subject to study, by the way, to inclusion of tourism to these historic spaces, because I had an experience in Berlin that I was living with a woman, a fashion designer. I was living in her house for a while, and we were talking, and she was saying that I was saying, why you are staying in this house, because it's very it's in center, it's historical place and so on. And she said to me, because I want to live in a touristic place because people are smiling here. This is the interesting part.
Yeah, very good reason.
We should discuss this issue with Yusuf Hocam maybe later. It's a broad subject. And also I agree with this neighborhood stuff, inclusion of tourists. I don't know. The first example it came in my mind is Sulukule. So it is very different subject to study, because if you include someone to Sulukule, it's subject to study. Anyway, so any other questions?
Nowadays, people are smiling on their web photos only.
Yeah.
I think I took a lot of time from your studio today.
Okay, I think there's no more questions.
If someone initiated, I didn't want to obstruct.
Okay, let's say last question, if anybody have. Okay, I think no questions. So thank you for your attendance. And if you want to conclude sentence, we love to.
Well, I wish you a very good semester. I like what you're doing, a joint studio work, which is, I believe, great. I hope you enjoy it and benefit it as much as you can. Thanks for inviting me again, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, Yusuf Hoca. We are very happy to have you here, and thank you for your informative discussion and for your presentation. So
you're welcome.
Thank you, Yusuf Hoca. Now we will continue with Professor Baritoadi. I'm sorry about the presentation. Maybe Ilya Hoca would introduce your name.
I think Barito will introduce himself.
Okay, Barito, please.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So good morning and good in the middle of the day. I think we have different time settings, but hope everyone in a nice and good condition, healthy as well. So I will present something related to the architectural urban problem and architectural response. So I will share my screen. Okay. So today my topic about urban challenge and architectural responses, especially in Indonesia perspective. And of course, it leads me to a question like, maybe first we need to know what is going on today, what will happen tomorrow, and of course, what we can do about it. Because I think the one part of our education, if not our main task as a human. Of course, what can we do about it? Like how can we be a part of the solution? So today I like to talk a little bit about the global situation, just to give you maybe a brief hints about what's going on globally, which may connect it to Indonesian situation. And I will try to give some brief explanation about Indonesia, and then some samples of architectural responses. And of course, something to think more than to answer, because I think the best sources is from you, when you the students go find yourself what to do, try to connecting dots. So I think that will be a better ways to achieve things rather than only from me. And I think because of the time and my limitation, maybe I not really comprehensive or something. So I like to apologize at the beginning. So I found this picture. If the Titanic was sinking today, like nobody can force me to wear life jacket. So like maybe we don't believe what happened. Like maybe it's a hoax because it's still dry. Or if I'm drink fuel, I don't freeze. Everything. I mean, this is what probably happened when we don't really see or feel the impact. Maybe we don't really know what's going on. And as you know, today's information is abundant, but we need to know which is true, which is false. So maybe it's not easy today to believe something. And I will like to start with population, as we know that population is increasing, and it's projected by 2050 around 66% of the Earth's population will live in urban areas. Well, it means people will concentrate on specific areas we call urban, and it will lead to something, because we know this too dense concentration will affect on a lot of um, problems, like resources problem, etc. So, and as it illustrates that only several places will be that place of density, and more to come. We will have like mega city growth, because I think the health situation, like the condition and policy, maybe everything lead us to more well-being life, uh, and in some ways raise the population. When we're talking about the urban sprawl, I think it's maybe almost the same information. We can see that like Istanbul has 16 million inhabitants, as well as in Jakarta, for example, 20.6 million. And this presents you the like disparities of habitats or disparities of density around the world. So it means some place will be concentrated or accommodate more people than other area. So it lead to the more problems, I suppose. For example, this is Hunger Map, not Hunger Game, yeah, Hunger Map 2019, where estimated or projected that 8 like millions people, like 821, do not get enough to food to eat. So this is maybe we hear this all the time, but this is I think one of the problem leads from the population itself, and maybe another thing as well. In Indonesia, I think we still have it like 5 to 14.9% of this problem stated on this map. Of course, water, another resources that is valuable for mankind. From this data presented, you can see that in some countries we will have a water stress problem. Comparing the ratio of water usage with the water supplies. So in Indonesia, it's also common that people using the river as the sources, but the river itself, it's also polluted due to the population and the increasing of waste, and it also affect the river condition. And talking about waste, of course, we know that this is the also a big problem to the world today, because like the population is increasing, so the consumption is also increased. And as we know, we have waste, whether it came from the like the rest of our daily usage, or maybe it's a package. So we know that waste in general, or plastic as well, is always increased. If we see in another context, of course, we hear a lot about climate change. Just some evidence from NASA, like see that the level of the carbons in atmosphere, we have it's in the level that is pretty high, higher than we have before 1950, and this is the data of 2013. And some cities will have the effect, will get the effect. Some will have on later years. Some will feel it sooner. This is estimated if no actions are taken to deal with this problem. So you can see Jakarta 2029, a little bit closer, but it says that Manokwari, Indonesia already have the impact of climate change. And you see the relation between population and climate change, because climate change lead to the other things like natural disaster, and like this figure illustrates the world population and the natural disaster. And in general, this situation of climate change will affect a lot of things, like and I think it's interconnected. When the global temperature rise, the oceans warming, and it also make the snow like melting. So we have glacial retreat, decreased snow cover, and then as we know today, extreme event, maybe we have more frequent than we used to be. And then ocean acidification, we see like it's affect the flora and fauna in the ocean as well. In Indonesia, now Indonesia is the fourth largest population in the world, but it's estimate we will go to the number 7. So maybe it's a good thing in somehow, but now it's still Indonesia still have a large number of population. So the situation, as illustrated previously, as the population is rising, but the growth is actually lower than before. All of this population estimate will live on the urban area as well. So we know that the population problem will lead to the problem of density and urbanism, and people in the rural area also move to the city. So we have urbanization problem as well in Indonesia. So this is another fact just to illustrate the comparison between Indonesia urban versus rural population. It is almost, I think, illustrate in this graphic as a almost an equal or a little bit more in the urban, which will tend to go more in the near future. And if we see the most island that concentrate is in Java, and especially in several cities like Jakarta, Bandung, Bekasi. But we see in Sumatra now also have the population increasing. And according to this stat, we can see that as we have more population, actually we have like more people in one area or very dense. So according to our rules or our standards, we need to have a kind of vertical housing model. But now I think it's exceed more than the basic like 200 or up to 400 people per hectare. So it's just illustration of how the area is like grow and creating the urban sprawl, and it's mostly concentrate on the urban itself, the city center or the like Jakarta and its nearby region. And later on, or projected on 2014, we will have this kind of increasing of the population in several cities in Indonesia. Of course, it will lead to the problem if we're talking about the demand and supplies. More population, of course, will drive more demand. And then we can see like from the ecological footprint we have and the supply side that needs to be there for the people, like the water or the space to live and etc. etc. I think that's just an illustration to give you example or some illustration of how population will drive the supply side. So we already lack of land or area for housing. If we refer to the increasing number of people in urban area and especially in Java. So slum area or squatters and things like so, I think it's maybe it's a common problem in urban in the world and especially in Indonesian context. And it leads to the water scarcity as well. Here says like 24 million Indonesia lack of safe water and lacks access to improved sanitation facilities. So I think it's very interconnected with like poverty and things like so. And in the term of the energy, Indonesia also have things to do in this situation. Like we need to have more supplies, but maybe what I'm not written here is the sources of the energy, mainly from the coal. So it also lead to the pollution. And like in the previous slides, when we're talking about climate change, this from this coal mining or from the power plant based from coal will increase the CO capacity in atmosphere. And waste, as mentioned before, it will like raising with the populations. Indonesia, in fact, is like number 2 It's one of the biggest contributors of the plastic pollution in ocean. I hear in other states it's called number 2, not really promising. And as you can see, a lot of environmental habitat will affect to this situation. In some social aspect, we're still struggling for the basic needs, like with people who live in the rural area, maybe they don't have enough access for services, and as well as the poverty itself. Um, so we also have people living below the poverty line. And education also remains a serious problem. Like 10.25 of population is illiterate. So and with poverty and education, they like link to each other. Maybe poor people cannot have a good education. Because they don't have good education, they cannot uplift themselves to be like in a better situation. Taken from some research about the social situation from the ADB. So it says some of the problem in social exclusion in Indonesia. We have several information here related about the vulnerable children and youth or remote indigenous communities reliant on nature resources, discrimination, human rights violation, transgender, even people with disabilities. So from this is just some small data actually where people have try to find out like which problem is in the higher case compare one to another. You can see like we have barrier to civil rights, stigmatization, barrier to education, health services, barrier to livelihood, and so on and so forth. So some theoretical framework to the solution. I'm not sure if I've put it right as this term, but I will say I like to begin with the ethical views for our existence, because we where we ourselves will put or will drive what action will we take. Maybe you already heard about this ethics, anthropocentrism versus ecocentrism. If you're talking about anthropocentrism, means human is in the top of the species, and human has a greater intrinsic values than other, and all is human centered. Or on the extreme side, we have ecocentrism, where human is not more than other being. Like there is a rock, maybe human is not more than the value than not inherit more values than other thing in earth on earth. So this is two extreme poles, I suppose, and this situation, of course, will lead us to uh, take our position and do what we think is right to do. If we're talking about some sustainability, as this is a topic that I think we learn, students learn about it in the time frame context. As previously, we tends to be like degenerative, like human is the master of nature and etc. But towards to the 2006, here we climb from the approach of bioclimatic, where human or architecture needs to respond to the climate, more to the sustainable of the energy efficiency, so more to the energy, and then a green building, carbon neutral, and sustainable development. So in here we have the 50-50 or zero, so less impact, less damage. So that's the sustainable development. And next, towards today, then we have more um, uh, things to propose, like biophilic is affiliate to nature, resilience to respond, recovery to disaster, permaculture, and regenerative design and development, where we not only think about doing so or less impact, less damage, but we need to do more to have positive impacts towards the nature, the cooperative, human as a part of nature, where we have active contribution, positive contribution to the nature, create abundance, and support positively to human nature living. So this is just some brief example. Maybe I will not go too deep, just how bioclimatic work, make connection to nature, but mostly to the climate and environmental condition to achieve the optimum thermal or eco architecture, or the energy conscious architecture, where both is reduce the negative and try to be as natural as possible. So we are in the sustainable development regime, I suppose. So we have sustainable in as a part of social, economic, and environment. So sustainable for social and environment, so we can do something as well as it's bearable or tolerate by our environment, or we can do something that is more to economic as long as it's fair to the social, and we needs to work on our economic, make the economic is vibrant, because if we choose more to the environment, maybe do nothing will better, but maybe the social needs will decrease because of the population, or maybe the economic will also decrease. So in my opinion, these three concept actually still centered to human or to mankind. We keep the environment to be bearable to our social needs, so not to the environment itself, but more to the human needs and in the economic term as well. So I will just go a little bit faster here. It is just the global goals derived from that concept, and these goals like no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, etc. Also a part of Indonesia, like a pillar of development for Indonesia 2045. So how to make the educational like more equal, more competition, and etc. I think I will not go deeper in this, just to illustrate that the sustainable goals is already in line with the Indonesian pillars or Indonesian principle of development. Yeah, of course, if you have population problem, but maybe this is not the answer of that. Now I like to talk about architecture as the field to be in a good position to save Indonesia, or in world maybe. Some samples I try to take and relate with the previous explanation. This is the vertical informal settlement and waste recycling center in Jakarta, Indonesia. This is about the housing strategy for informal settlement. So basically, we try to do the proposal is got the whole gym award for sustainable construction, where the project basically to offer alternative semi-organized structure addressing people which is living in informal settlements that continually face severe flooding. So we have like several positions. placed in the strategic position in Jakarta, and this idea is to bring back the settlement. But as we know, the vertical housing is also lead to another problem. So this proposal try to tackle the informal settlement situation, or so-called kampung or village. So this is the existing condition we have for area, and one of the solution that proposed, because it's related to the place where it where the contact of the site. So the first one is to deal with the facade, but mostly because this was a part of waste recycling, or the people who work collecting waste. So the strategy how the in habitat build facade and interior with recycled materials, guided by professional and educated members of community. So the people asked to design their own facade by using the waste materials. So the concept, the waste will be recycled, composted, and reused. And some community base can provide income for the kampung communities and building materials for their houses. So this is just the diagram to illustrate that concept, where all the local materials can be used, and some can be also implement for their own house, or on this vertical house. So this is one example, as now a lot of people is in Jakarta, like the population itself. So this is one of the illustration how to deal with this verticality, and try to make it as self-sufficient as it's possible, and encapsulating the traditional kampung dynamics in high-rise solution. So this is illustration of how it provide area for community-based waste processing. While with this design, the kampung community is based on social coherence or of outdoor activity, livelihood, of an informal economy, and self-maintenance. So the design itself, considering this situation, to keep the nuance, and basically the coherence of the kampung structure, as similar as in the real kampung situation. So in here it's explained that the vertical kampung ramps, oversized galleries, it holds warung, vehicle, or animals. So it's not maybe it's different with the previous samples, as it's more to be as close as the the ecology of the people. So this is the condition where the area is nearby the highway, so they can use structure below and develop things on the below the tollways. And this is another condition where we have the river. So this is aligned with the Jakarta Bersih program, how these people can coexist or have positive contribution with the water and the river itself. So the community-based waste management and the use of recycled materials, hopefully to contribute to minimal the ecological footprint. Another samples, actually, this is from the master class. So there are an event of the Vertical Kampung master class organized by one of the famous architecture bureau in Indonesia and abroad, SAU. And basically, this is a kind of event that talking about the Vertical Kampung concept and make this as an exercise to do the real design on the spot. So I took one of the samples, the proposal in Penggilingan case, Jakarta, where we have some famous architect that to be the teachers and participants from all around Indonesia. So basically, the proposal in the samples is start by mapping the kampung utilities and the community connection. So it start to identify what is happen on the site, and it's stated that on the socio-spatial perspective, which is the most significant aspect in design any community space. So it don't start like doing blocks and etc., but firstly start to investigate the socio-spatial perspective and collaborate hand in hand with the local inhabitant and made their opinions matter. So because we know top-down planning lead to some unsuccessful cases. So in this lesson, they try to do more participatory based design where they ask the community, they even ask children to speak their dreams, what is ideal house by making draw and etc. So what founded on this situation is the what is going on between space where the happiness only real when shared. So this design try to focus on number of shared space on some specific patterns. So like in 1 meters, they have several activities that may be shared, as well as 2 meters, 4 meters. So in between space will be an opportunity to create some sharing or community facility. So their concept is put something as a constanta, like the utilities need to be there, road needs to be there, and then the shared space, it's positioned on its place, and then people can play with their own house. So so they can come up with the organic housing solution. So like the private space is for the house owner, where they have like two shared space, like utility, wet kitchen and bedroom can be shared, and the terrace shared to be a place for social interaction, etc. While the middle area inside the house still in private. So with this approach, layer by layer, this design try to implementing the basic pattern, and then goes more vertical and top up the community layer again, and then top up the vertical expansion again. So it's like layering between those facilities. And in terms of the in general, so that types can be generated, but still keeping the utilities connected, and the community also connected and maintain this local economy and small business. So this it means like this is the basic aim of this design to maintain this existing pattern to be there, so people who use it will still feel like they're almost like their previous situation. So some quotes like the problem is not the architecture, but basically to reorganize things that already exist. So here the illustration of the proposal where the people can be living together and keeping their previous activities, even though the structure is more vertical rather than horizontal. Another sample I like to share is the micro library. It get the Holcim Award as well, and it also has the Aga Khan Award to 2017-2019 cycle from SAU Architect. So basically the building itself or the architecture solution itself, it's not the something that is big, but it's more to the repeating solution to the place that is needed. So the micro library aims to raise literacy by offering attractive space for reading. Basically, it has like small area, like 2-story area that it has the first story for community purposes and the next story for reading. And it aim to place not only in one place, only in one location, but also spread around Indonesia with the aim of raise the literacy. It aims to help combat Indonesia's low literacy rate. And it also have the network of libraries. And in here, rather than or supplementing the city library, one city library per city, micro library intends to have one per district, as well as later on to be developed with the mobile library. So this is several design of library that is already some already built and planned, and this concept is also not like not initiated by one party, but the architect with this proposal, the architect try to build a connection with other stakeholders. So like in this micro library Fibonacci, for example, in Bandung, it has the cooperation with the municipalities in Jawa Barat, and some it has the Dompet Duafa Foundation, for example. So, and some with the bank and things like so. So the one of the interesting approach that is used by SAU, so working with community, founding partner, government, media, and NGO. So all linked together, and then they can realize this idea. And SAU also known by their approach of not only environmentally friendly, but with the architectural aesthetic as well. So in this sample, they designed the micro library with the Fibonacci design, where they try to bridging the parametric design with local construction technique. So playing with some shape and exploration, but still keeping the design as it be able to be built by the local construction technique. So this is just some samples of design, the how the design itself, and you can see the materials. For example, it's like the standard material. So I like to go with the next samples, another micro library with the concept of the binary code, which says that the book are the window of to the world. So it means if we read, so if we read, we can read the world as well. So the binary is like symbolizing this sentence, and they play with this binary code with the ice cream bucket. So it's like very like a waste material. So this is some of the situation at night. So when the ground floor part can be used for community gathering, etc., and in the second story used as the library. And it has interesting interior, creating by the combination of this the ice bucket itself. And I like to go a little bit about related to the green building, as if we talk about the energy problem, climatic change, and we will link to this concept, but I think I will not go into um, too far with this concept. But basically, the green building in Indonesia is growing. As we can see, a lot of project now is based on that concept, and we also have several organization for that for the green building. Like we have the World Green Building Council, we have H and Green Mark. But in Indonesia, I think the most recognized is the Green Building Council Indonesia, or GBCI. So basically, green building means to design something that is sustainable, not only with plan and etc. And it needs to be environmentally responsible and resource efficient. So it means it has to be energy efficient, like very good in resource maintenance, but it needs to keep the user in the health condition, etc. So the concept claims to meet the sustainable development goals on their aspects. I think I will not go into one of these, but just as you later on can learn by yourself, the GBCI state that this is one of their concept which is aligned with the sustainable development goals. And in Indonesia as well, it's claimed that it's already have the energy savings, the water savings, and the reduction of the CO2 emission. So this is as the 2017 data. If we see further in these tables, we can see the increasement of the green building projects from the previous year, and the saving energy claimed to be as written here, like 30%, 33, 42, and etc. Well, here is indicating some good news about energy saving. Basically, it has several concepts. I also don't go too deep with this, but a building can be recognized as the green ship buildings. This is using the green building GPCI criteria. If the building take into account the site development, like the green area, or using the local materials, or keeping the urban heat island, for example, with the proper materials. The energy efficient and conservation, like to calculate the OTTV or the thermal that transfer into the building, needs to be calculated and needs to be mitigated, so it will be below set in several standards, like 35 watt per square meters. And all of measures, like using the right heavy AC system, for example, the most efficient one as to achieve below the baseline that's already stated by the green ship. And water conservation, like how to treat the water, how to using the rainwater, for example, how to use the water from the wudu, for example, ablution, or in the coming from the floor drain, can be recycled and using for the flushing, for example. And material resources, like on using the green materials. Indoor health comfort, to think about the comfort inside. So there are like several standards, like the building needs to achieve some specific thermal comfort, but in the same time needs to be answering the energy efficient as well. And finally, the building environment management, where the building needs to be managed in a manner of the green building. So this is just a brief explanation of all the criteria. If the building meet all these criteria from the design phase to the construction and the operational stage, then it can be awarded with several rank, which means it's also efficient in some ways. Just some example, if we're talking about green building, you will see the big buildings because it has the basic requirement of some areas, so it's not intended to implement on small area, but there's a limit of the minimum area to be certified. And now the green building code is integrate with the building standards in Indonesia, especially in the government building and public buildings, and it is voluntarily to be implemented by the other, like private sectors, for example. But in the public building with like more than 5,000 square meters needs to apply those green principles. That's why you can see all of these samples, and mostly they fulfill by fulfilling all of the criteria. So I will not go deep to that, but maybe we need to really ask, are we really solve the problems with that way? Of course, this is not to discourage any of these solution, but more to think, like when we decide to work on our plan, like we try to solve some problems, so we need to try to do it critically rather than just following the previous concept. Because now when we're talking about green buildings, green is like sexy word, because all product labeled with green or building labeled with green, so we can say like, okay, this is the like a good solution for things. So maybe it's greenwash, maybe it's fake. So this is one of things that we need to be critical about. Not long time ago, I read about the department that tried to work with the green concept, where it has ambition to supply O2 by planting the more vegetation, but now it's more to be like overrun by plants, by mosquitoes, and left with less maintenance. And now, so far, I heard that only like 10 resident or something per building, so it's really becoming another problem actually. One of the zero carbon city also has this kind of situation where the actual condition is as it try to meet the zero carbon city, but now it's not able to fulfill that, and it also have less inhabitant, so the concept is not really working well. When we talk about Anthropocene, we know that this concept try to see when human has some significant effect to the earth. So when the human has the effect, like make extinction of the animals, or like increasing level of climate warming, and so much that we actually like damaging the environment itself. But just a little brief, like if we read Al-Baqarah, for example, so it states that when human is created, it have potential to make corruption in the earth, so make the earth is also destroy. So that's what maybe the angel says, but Allah said, of course, God is more beyond knowing. So if you see the image on the left, intentionally green design compared to the right, like almost similar at glance, but it shows when the nature take back. This is the site from the Chernobyl, where no humans or no people living there. So the nature is flourished in human absence. But should we just live? So if we live, where should we live? And if we just see some statement you can find on Quran, so basically not to do corruption, not excess on do things, and not do mischief on earth. It's one of the things that maybe will be the base or the ethic of what we are going to do, or what we are going to design. So now it's your move for the students to think about this situation. So thank you very much. That's all my material. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Baritoadi. Do you mind that I will moderate, or Ilya Hoca, what would you prefer? I can do that too as well.
I think continue you, Asli.
Okay. Then I have I thank you for the very informative presentation. Well, it is very, you I think you explain all matters related to the green building. I think it is very important for our students to learn this issues in detail. I thank you for this. And when you telling me all this green building and sustainability stuff, I always think about one thing: the communication with other disciplines. If I go back to Yusuf Hoca's presentation, he was always emphasizing the importance of the communication between us as an architects or designers with municipalities or some other authorities. If we look at from that side, I think, yes, it is important to communicate with the authorities and with architects, but also I think it is important to communicate with other fields, because you were talking about very interesting subjects like ecocentrism and some kind of collective projects with the inhabitants, so on. So I was, when you were presenting, in my mind, I was thinking how we can collaborate with all kinds of fields all together. Is it possible? For example, inhabitants, yes, and maybe some like farmers, because the last class I was talking with my students about the seeds. I mean the seeds of the plants, of the trees, or any other natural stuff. We need them in the future because some of them are disappearing, and they mutate in some ways. Changed, yes. And maybe we should protect them, and maybe as an architects we should do something for them, like maybe the shelters or the places underground or some other kind of buildings in Antarctica or so on. There are projects like this, but to succeed this, we have to collaborate with other fields, like the very simple one, the farmers or zoologists. I don't know. I'm not I don't know really what it can be done, but this was the idea in my mind. Also, inclusion of the inhabitants is a very important part. It's coming to this teaching, educating stuff, as previous presentation was again emphasizing the education of the future generation, because you know authorities sometimes they are not aware of all kind of this scientific stuff. So maybe yes, if we cannot include them with our projects, or if we cannot tell what we cannot explain, or maybe they don't understand us, but we can collaborate in a large group of specialists, and then maybe it's another way to succeed what we want to do in the future. Of course, this is an idea. Maybe I don't know, in the future, we may again collaborate together, maybe in field or online. Maybe we can think about it in the future. And this is the one thing I was thinking. And the other one, I was, I was taking notes. Yes, and actually, there is a match about the social interaction spaces, the shared spaces you were mentioning. It's the same thing actually. Yusuf Hoca were talking about the inclusion of public facilities in the urban design. So it's nice a match. So I would like to mention this. The other thing, I really liked the examples that you showed us, especially the horizontal settlement projects, not the taller ones. For example, in one gold certificate building that you showed us, Sampo something, I saw that there is a small settlement just next to it. I mean, the building is really high, and we see some very small two houses just next to that building. So I was thinking, so if I mean, I don't know how they give this gold certificates. There are some procedures, I understand, but if it is possible to integrate the procedures related to this building's environment, because if we make this kind of high building just next to this kind of slum, let's say, area, we block their daylight first. I mean, so maybe this certification may include some other parameters like affecting the environment or so on. Because we are talking about the urban design, that could be an inclusion that just it came my mind when you show us this example. Maybe you would like to. I mean, maybe you can share your ideas with us about this subject.
Okay, thank you very much for your response. First, what I've concluded from what you mentioned previously, as I also try to illustrate in my presentation, is the architect role, not only as a designer, so not only to design, but architects can be a mediator, so like mediating people so they can get the best for themselves, for example. That's what related with the participatory design, as you mentioned. I'm not sure if it's practical to implement on today's and in this studio case, but at the real case, some participatory method will work better than the top-down design. And of course, this is not an easy task, as you mentioned. I know some people who specialize on do this. They really have knowledge to do that, because it's not like they pushing their ideas, but how they can be able to collecting ideas from others, but at the same time make the people realize what they can do and what they don't. For example, one example I heard, like all people when they want to make a building like 2 or 3 story building, most people want to live on the lower ground because it's easy to access, for example. So the architect, he didn't say that it's not allowed. He said, okay, no problem. Who wants to be on the ground floor? Like everyone say that. But then everyone get representative for their area, and then they get things to represent their site, and then they ask to put where they want to live. So when everyone's put their floor plan, they all of them realize, okay, I cannot live in the ground floor because there is Mr. A, Mr. B, and etc. And then they do it themselves. Okay, I will go up, for example. So this kind of mediation, it's also important for architect. Like just we know that architect not only make design and give the design, but they can be as a mediator. And another samples, architect can be a lobbyist, for example, in the micro library. Daliana from SAU presented that this is like the micro library that she and her firm is, won the award. It is like it's really philanthropy work, but she has some very noble goals behind that. And the important thing is she can make a connection. Like they came to the municipality, they offer their proposal, so they becoming lobbyists, and they come to the company, they offer that because the design, the micro library is built not with their money but with others. So it means architect not only think in design roles but also can be a lobbyist, for example. So this is one of the things I hope I can gather with students. And second thing is to be critical, because not everything labeled with green is the solution. Even though I am a green building professional as well, but I think not every solution has to be that, or at least we need to know what exactly we want to address the problem. So be critical to that context. And talking about the green certificate, so if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned about the social parameters, like how if we have like a very big building, maybe it affect the community around it. So that's what I've got from the question, if I'm not mistaken. So in the green certificate itself, there is some parameters related to the social, which is how the building can relate to the to its context, but it's not as in a very social approach. So the if the building can give access to outside, like easy access, for example, like in the maybe like in the second floor or in third floor, he can, or the building wants to open an access to the public transportation, for example, so they get more points, for example. So that's things that related to the social parameter. So far I can remember. But if we're talking about like the big building or the tall building will like shaded its neighbor, so it's maybe it's not a part of that. So far I know. And another thing that the green building also has the green certificate for neighborhood. So maybe it will tackle more to that context. So maybe that's my response. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you for the answer. I didn't get the last sentence. Is there any certification for urban
Neighborhood, yes.
settlement neighborhood? Is there any certificates like this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They have the certificate as well for that, for the settlement. But it's not, I mean, it's not common yet, but they have certificate for the neighborhood. They have certificate for interior and new building and existing building.
Okay.
So that's a certificate
okay.
from the green building.
Okay, it's good to know. I was always focused on the building itself, and that's it. But it is a good start for better future. Thank you. Okay, so is there any other questions to Professor?
I would like to ask.
Yes.
Oh,
okay. Who is first?
You are the first, Enda.
Okay. Yeah, really interested on how verticality based solution works. I just wanna ask question about your opinion about vertical cemetery, because some people bring this up due to large population growth and a pandemic, because people die every day. Yeah. Can a vertical cemetery actually really going to work? Because for some of us, if people die, they get buried on the ground. Even when nowadays they do the sharing graveyard, for example, in San Diego, in Jakarta, uh, it's still expensive thing in the urban area to get decent resting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mbak Endah, for your interesting and challenging questions. Let me clarify a little bit, like vertical cemetery. I mean, like, what do you mean by the vertical cemetery? Is it like we have like 2 or 3 story of cemetery, or we can bury people one in another on layer, like we have someone buried like a little bit deeper, and then we put another person on the top, the dead person, of course, on the top, and
No,
etc.
bring the graveyard up on the ground,
Oh,
upper the ground, like, yeah.
okay. Bring it upper. Okay. So so in my opinion, if we talk about graveyard first, um, I suppose majority of Muslim will first talk about the way, like the correct ways to do the cemetery process. So so far all of the ways to conduct the cemetery is fulfilled. So I believe it can be one of the solution. But maybe what will be challenged now, it I think it will came eventually when we have a lack of land or something like so, like maybe in the urban, which is very dense, no place to go. But in some cases we still have up to the moment we still have a lot of area, like in outside of the, like in Yogyakarta, for example, we have like hectares of cemetery uh, uh, plot by the government, for example, and on some case it still be cheaper than the vertical one. But later on, if the kaidah is still fulfilled and we have no area to do that, I believe it probably can be one solution.
Yeah, thank you for this
Yeah.
challenging question. Yeah, it's big questions. It's interesting. I would like to study on this kind of project, but there are many other parameters that we should think about this kind of subject. Well, it's a question that freshing my mind in a way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Another question.
Ilya?
Yeah, if
Yeah.
no question, maybe I will give some kind of comment.
Yeah.
From is that okay? Nobody?
Yes, please, Ilya, continue.
Okay, yeah. I'm seeing from these two presenters, Yusuf and Barito. In the level of interpretation, from Yusuf, we learn about the point of contemporary interpretation of the mahala, which creates some kind of speculation from, say, import of the idea of gated communities, etc., etc. Then and create another problem. So I think from our project point of view, it is very interesting if some of you could try to interpret further of this Mahala system and in contemporary and also the future setting. Maybe not in terms of say like settlement in the flat low rise and low rise building and lower density, but in the more density and integrated solution. Maybe so. I think there is a challenge here being opened by Yusuf just to translate the old value of space into future development in urban setting. So that's the first. The second, as Asl also has mentioned, that the communication with other discipline is very important, and communication with the farmer, communication with the agriculture is also very important, because Baritoadi has already show us that the absence of human creating green green setting. So of course we cannot simply move to Mars and leave our Earth flourish as the jungle. Unfortunately, we are not in that state of technology, although the idea is already there. But at least we can do the balance. That communicate with other means also communicating our authority and others' authority. That we, as an architect, has some kind of authority in managing spaces with our intellectuals, with our creativity, etc., etc. But at the same time, we have to respect the authority of the nature to create themselves. So I think that is very, very important, and also at the same time challenging states of mind, of design to related to the project. So how create architecture that at the same time is functional to human being, but at the same time it's also productive, or maybe some kind of generative to relevant to non only human beings. So that's that's the question. And based on the examples of, say, Yusuf and also Barito, we also learned that architect may also wrong, or at least is maybe wrong is too sharp word, but the solution is always incomplete. Master, for instance, being regarded as the fantastic zero carbon city, but there is also a hole there, a problem. So I think it invites also us that when we think with our best and try to connect with some kind of outside of our authority, and it creates some kind of potential of mistakes. And in this project, it is allowed to be to have a mistake. It is allowed. Why? Because of course, ideas is always meaningful here. Although in reality, maybe there will be a flaw or maybe a problem with that idea. But generating idea first is very important in this stage of design. So from my point of view, the bravery to interpret, to make a bias, to create, to give some kind of to take the challenge and try to understand better and to excel with that knowledge, interpret in design states. There will be a stage that all of the students should take sooner or later. Better sooner than later. Although since if we sooner creating the ideas, then maybe with the exchange of discussion, other students also with the tutor and assistant, that will be maybe they'll create some kind of a more mature design proposal. I think that's from two speakers. I have learned a lot on that aspect. Thank you, Assoc.
Thank you very much, Ilya, for this kind of good conclusion. It's a summary. I think I agree all of them. And if you have any questions to Barito Hoca, please ask, or otherwise, because time has already passed. I mean, it's almost 3 hours right now. We have to continue with our students. We have to look at our students' projects. And that's why
absolutely.
I would.
Sorry.
Please,
in Indonesia, we need Asar prayer. So take a break for maybe 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 15 minutes later, we will meet with using the same link, only Ilya Hoca and our students and me and assistants. See you in after 30 minutes later. Thank you very much for the presentation, Yusuf Hoca and Barito Hoca. It was I learned very much. I mean, it's very open. It's very opening. It was very opening session for me, and I'm sure that for my students as well. So, goodbye, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.
Bye.
Yeah, in my class, please check the classroom. Okay, bye.
I will meet. I will end.
Thank you.
Gejolak berirama di kalbu, haru dan rindu di dalam dan bertalu di hatiku. Inilah saatnya untuk bertemu. Semakin bergema, nyaring terdengar kabarmu di sana. Tergara di jiwa untuk bersua dan bersama. Seperti dulu kala. We have to go, move on. Nothing can beat me down. Percaya kita semua pasti bisa lewati semua rintangan yang ada untuk selamanya. Ayo lebih baik untuk Indonesia. Kita bawa arsitektur berjaya. Universitas Islam Indonesia untukmu bersatu lewati jalan yang berliku, terus maju di sana mimpi yang kita tuju. Walau berbeda, di sini Allah kita, selamanya harus selalu kita jaga seutuhnya, menyatu di dalam jiwa raga. We have to go on, nothing can beat me down. Percaya kita semua pasti bisa lewati semua rintangan yang ada untuk selamanya. Ayo lebih baik untuk Indonesia, kita bawa arsitektur berjaya. Universitas Islam Indonesia,